So,
All right. Hey everybody. I'm Ray Eggerts. I'm the director of events here at Empower Debate. Thanks for joining us for our topic lecture. We're going over the February topic, which is resolve the United States should accede to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, or the ICC. And I'm here with Sam Weiss. We're both debaters at Masterman, although with different partners. We do a lot of prep together, and Sam won Pennsbury on this topic, and I quartered Pennsbury being the top prelim seed. So I like to think we know what we're talking about when it comes to this topic specifically. Um, so yeah, Sam has 6 bids as well, and I'm a Sigma, and I have 3 bids, or I guess three gold and a silver.
yeah,
So let's start with some background. Sam, you want to take the slide?
sure. Okay. So the Rome Conference is what like set up the ICC basically. Um, yeah, in 1998, a bunch of heads of state came in from mostly the UN and decided how they wanted to prosecute war criminals, and they came up with the ICC. Um,
Mhm.
there were key debates about universal versus limited jurisdiction. That basically means, does the ICC have the ability to prosecute war crimes in the entire globe or only in certain places? Yeah, the United States was against the Rome Statute because they were afraid that Americans could be prosecuted. That ended up being why the US is not in the ICC right now. We don't want Americans to get prosecuted for war crimes that we commit. It's interesting. Um,
Yeah, but we still engaged in the negotiations, which
yeah.
made people pretty mad because we were like telling them, oh, we think it should be this, and then we reached the end and we still didn't ratify it, which makes us look like hypocrites.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So with the Rome Statute, we they defined what crimes of aggression were. So basically, what war crimes were. They decided that heads of state got immunity, and yeah, that's basically it. Oh, also the UN Security Council, um, they decided that they have the right to veto ICC cases of like war criminals. So say you're a war criminal, you're getting prosecuted by the ICC, the P5 can come in and say no, no, no.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Next, let's talk about, after everyone signed it, now let's jump from 1998 to the modern day, where they're prosecuting various war crimes. Right now, they don't have any trials going on. They convicted someone in July of last year. So that's their last conviction, finding someone guilty.
No, that's fine. The green one's good. Yeah, that's good.
I think
No,
someone's
that's good.
You
Yeah, I
Sean,
saw it.
you
Yeah, I
want to
saw it.
wait, can we
Bye.
mute him?
I'm gonna mute that person. Okay. Sorry about that. Um, if you're not muted, make sure you are. Um, okay, back to talking about getting together. Okay. Yeah. Now they issued in 2023 an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin. The ICC prosecutes four kinds of crimes, which are genocide. They're called atrocity crimes: genocide, aggression, which is what I believe Putin was convicted of, which is um, like starting a war for no reason, which is what he's in Ukraine. Then there's what else? What are the other two? Human rights violations and war crimes,
Yeah,
right?
well,
Like use of torture and chemical weapons, and that go against like the Geneva Convention, that kind of thing. Um, so yeah, he was charged with unlawful deportation and transfer of children during the Russo-Ukrainian War. Um, ah, okay, and it was the first arrest warrant for a sitting head of a state from a permanent member of the UN Security Council, and we issued this from the ICC, but the ICC can't directly arrest Putin because he's not a signatory and because they don't have a police force. And then they did something very similar for Netanyahu, the and his war minister in Israel, where they sent out a warrant for their genocide in Gaza, but you know the U.S. doesn't like those arrest warrants and they haven't been enforced. So even though Netanyahu is like in the U.S. this weekend and this week or whatever, he has not been arrested because one, we haven't signed on, and two, we really don't like those. And that's kind of one of the major things. Like there is some like shifting uniqueness on this topic because there's a very vocal debate in the US right now about the ICC. Which relates to the US relationship to the ICC, which is that we are not members. We negotiated it, we signed it, but we never ratified it. And that means that we are not, it doesn't have jurisdiction, and it can, but we can refer cases to it by the Security Council. We do send some funding to them, and on certain topics, we can agree to ICC jurisdiction. But because we were so afraid of people being prosecuted specifically for war crimes in what's it called? In Afghanistan,
Yeah.
we passed this thing called we went to a bunch of different countries and made them sign bilateral immunity agreements, which basically say you can't deport foreign nationals. So even though you're a member of the ICC, you made a separate pact with the US that you won't send our nationals to The Hague. The ICC is the physical court is in The Hague, and they can't try people in absentia. They can put out arrest warrants, but the person needs to be in the court in order for them to be convicted of a war crime.
Wait, right.
So,
Let me go back.
okay.
Also, the way that, like, to address Maddox's question in the chat, the way that the ICC works is if you have an arrest warrant out for you and you travel to a place that is under the jurisdiction of the ICC, so is party to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, then that nation is like under obligation from the ICC to arrest you. But in cases like Russia and Israel, like Netanyahu and Putin have traveled to places that are party to the ICC, but those countries have like asked the ICC for like basically a pass, right? These people can visit me and I won't arrest them, and that's harming the credibility of the ICC right now.
Yeah. Um, okay. Are we ready to move on to some AF arguments? Are there any more questions about background? Okay, sweet. Okay. The first argument on the AF is Russia, which is that right now the efforts to end the Ukraine war are failing, but by the ICC, so those arrest warrants don't do anything. But the link is that the US adds more legitimacy to the ICC and member states arrest Putin when he visits, or it like puts more pressure on him to end the Ukraine war in some way or another. Because remember, they don't have a police force, so you can't make the argument that the US is going to send people into Russia to extract Putin. That's not going to happen. And the impact is in some way reducing the effect of the Ukraine war. So ending it, putting pressure on for there to be peace talks, those kinds of things. Another one, an argument that I really like, is sanctions, which is that right now Trump is going to do an executive order. I think he did it today. It looks like the news is saying that he did it today. He signed an executive order saying that they're going to put sanctions on the ICC, which will destroy them. It basically says like, and those are in response to the arrest warrants for Israeli officials that Republicans are really upset about, and a bunch of Democrats as well. But the link is that the AF grants immunity to those sanctions, which saves the court. And this is a pretty fun argument because the uniqueness is super recent, and the impact is just all you need to prove is that the ICC does something good. And if you can prove that, then it's pretty good.
So
Same.
this China argument is pretty similar to the Russia-Ukraine argument. Basically, well, the difference being there's no arrest warrant for like Xi Jinping right now. But generally the argument is China is committing war crimes right now, or like crimes against humanity. But the ICC can't investigate them right now because whatever, they don't have the resources, they don't have the jurisdiction, they don't have the legitimacy. But the affirmative gives them that legitimacy, which allows the ICC to then prosecute people committing genocide against the Uyghur Muslims. And in some way, that's going to solve the genocide.
Yeah.
But again, you can't make the argument that people are going to go into Beijing and like arrest Xi Jinping because there's no police force. You just have to make arguments that it's going to somehow fix it.
Yeah.
This legitimacy argument is a little better, I think, than both the Russia and China arguments. Basically, it tells you that right now, U.S. legitimacy is down. There's like a lot of warrants you can give on that, right? Like Trump is probably decreasing the American legitimacy with our allies. Oh, wait, we got a question. If the P5 can veto ICC decisions, why didn't Russia veto their arrest warrant? Why wouldn't China veto investigation on their acts? Loki,
I
I was wondering that too, right?
I think that I'm not sure about this. I think that the P5 can only veto.
Once they've been convicted, I think, right?
Oh, no, I think it's
Oh,
that the way that it works is that the P5 or the Security Council can refer cases to the ICC and say,
okay.
"Hey, ICC, you should investigate this." But that's what gets vetoed. But if like something else happens that brings the case to the table, I'm pretty sure that the ICC is allowed to investigate, and
No,
that the
I think the P5 can reject convictions, right? And because Putin hasn't been convicted yet, there's just an arrest warrant out for him by the ICC. The P5 can't veto it yet. I'm pretty sure that's the case.
yeah, I've heard.
Right? It's what Ray said.
Oh, sweet. Okay, yeah, I've heard that brought up in a couple of rounds, but I don't think many people understand exactly how it works because I don't think the P5 really does much with the ICC because the ICC is kind of a joke right now. So if I've heard it brought up, if you understand it very well, then you probably have an upper hand in some rounds because if they can just veto those cases, then that's pretty terminal to those contentions. What does soft power mean? Soft power is like not using my military to like invade countries and force them to do what I want, but using like economic power, diplomatic power, just like, my dominance in the tech race, that to tell countries what to do. So it's not hard power, it's soft power. I'm telling them what to do. Uh, wait,
Reload, he didn't finish this argument. Okay, basically, U.S. legitimacy is down with our allies right now because our allies don't trust Trump. But affirming solves because basically right now there's a double standard with war crimes, right? When like the Congo commits a war crime, they are punished by the ICC. But when the United States commits a war crime, nobody cares. And so other countries like are mad at the US and that decreases our legitimacy on the international stage. The affirmative solves for that because it blunts the double standard criticism and means we can increase US credibility. That allows us to like do more things on the international stage, like push other countries around or just like ask them to do things that we want them to do.
there's also like good clash on the weighing with like neg contentions because some neg contentions say like, oh, the US should deal with war crimes unilaterally or that kind of thing. But if the US doesn't have any credibility, then like it kind of turns their case because even if you think the US should be doing stuff on their own, they need cred to do that.
Yeah.
And the last one is ICC efficiency or efficacy, which is basically that they're inefficient now, but the US joining gives more backing. So I've heard this a couple ways. I know Fairmont was running this as funding, like things cost a lot of money to do, and the US provides funding specifically. But there's other stuff that says, oh, it gives them credibility that prevents people from leaving. It gives them just another country that can send cases, that kind of thing. Or there's like a spillover effect. It causes more people to join. All arguments I've heard as part of this general idea of ICC efficiency. Um, and it basically says that there are more investigations, which means the ICC gets stronger, they get better at decreasing genocide and human rights abuses. And the impact would be deterring genocides. You could have specific impacts about Sudan or Myanmar or just future genocides. And the reason why this argument is pretty powerful is that the neg is almost always going to read an overview or arguments as to why the ICC is bad, like not bad because it causes bad things to happen, but bad because it doesn't work. But this basically says, yes, it doesn't work now, but the aft solves that. So it kind of gets you out of a lot of neg defense. And then just generally, there are a bunch of general ICC good arguments. Like there are so many articles that say, oh, the ICC would be able to stop this specific conflict. The ICC would be able to stop Trump from doing deportations, right? So they're able to hold the US accountable. They're able to hold other countries accountable when they join. And all that these arguments need is like uniqueness that the ICC is good and it's good for more countries to join it. And so that's why I kind of didn't make it a specific link chain because it's very, amalgamous. If we join the ICC, is the U.S. directly giving money to the organization? Yes.
Yeah.
As part of the Rome Statute, we provide funding proportional to the size of our economy. Moving
If
on.
the US economy is really big, we would give a lot of money.
Yeah.
Oh, who are these kids?
Spillover is like US joins and then other countries follow suit because the US is like big and trustworthy. Do you know how much that would be? No, I don't have an exact number for you.
Yeah, I tried to find it, but there's no article saying we'd give
Yeah.
some million. It would probably be somewhere in the
Somewhere in Bill.
million. I don't know. Who's to say?
Yeah, a lot of money.
Okay, neg arguments. This one is that the ICC is unconstitutional. You could run it as an overview. I've seen it mostly only as a contention, which is that judicial independence is high now as uniqueness. Like our Supreme Court is getting more independent. I don't know how true that is. I feel like they're pretty not independent right now, but there's evidence saying that that's true. Then the link is that the Rome Statute violates due process. So it means that you're being tried in Belgium without a jury by people who are not your peers. You're not like innocent until proven guilty in the ICC because it's a foreign court. They don't have the same like evidence standards. Basically, it's sending U.S. people in order to be tried in a non-U.S. court, and that violates the Constitution. And then the impact, that's also iffy, I think, on this contention. I think that the link is like kind of true. I feel like there's definitely an argument to be made that there are some constitutional issues with the Rome Statute, but the impact is kind of hard to say. Maybe Trump Trump wants to be a dictator and, weakening the Constitution helps him become a dictator, or it causes rioting or something. Um, I saw it run with the rioting impacts, but it's low-key incoherent. So I would say look into this argument because you're going to have to respond to it. But I would say maybe don't run this one.
Maybe you could read it on the lay. It
Yeah.
could be compelling to parent judges.
Yeah. If you see someone is like a lawyer and they're your judge,
Yeah.
that might be the move.
No.
And they say they want like clarity of arguments and they love America. Okay. Next is an overview. Bias, which is that the ICC is really focused on Africa. And that's found in like their statistics of court cases being almost entirely and convictions being almost entirely from Africa. There's a pretty easy response to this that a lot of cards point out, which is that the ICC mostly takes cases from member states, and most of the member states of the ICC are from Africa. And so it's kind of not true, I think, the bias argument, but you can definitely make that claim.
Also, if you hear this claim, you certainly could returns on it, right? Because it probably flows af, right? If there's bias right now, the uniqueness definitely says that there's bias right now. And a lot of the evidence says it's because the ICC, one, doesn't have the jurisdiction in countries outside of Africa, and two, don't have the resources to prosecute crimes outside of Africa. Well, the affirmative solves, gives the court more jurisdiction outside of Africa, which decreases their bias, and two, increases their funding, which means they can prosecute more crimes in a larger geographic scale. Plus, the spillover argument means more European countries join the ICC. That gives even greater jurisdiction. So I low-key think this argument can flow af really easily.
Yeah. Okay. Next is Ukraine on the neg. I think this argument is pretty strong. I think the link chain makes sense. So it's basically that in the status quo, Trump and Putin and Zelensky are going to come to peace talks. And the link is that the US joining would make peace talks go away because Russia gets really mad when they don't want the US to call them war criminals. And so they would start tweaking and call off the peace talks. And then the link is either the war goes on when otherwise it would end, or it causes escalation because it gets angry. And then you just read impacts about why the Ukraine war has been bad. It causes deaths, it causes refugees, and it causes the inflation of food prices across the world, and pressures supply chains. Yeah.
This US military argument, I think it's a little silly, and potentially problematic, but basically what it says is the United States has a bunch of military personnel everywhere, right? Like they do a bunch of shit or things across the globe. But unfortunately, when you affirm the US becomes party to the Rome Statute, and thus they have the potential of getting prosecuted by the ICC. That means that like military generals get really scared of doing things because they fear prosecution, which is bad because US reaction time increases in case like something bad happens. It could be potentially problematic because it's basically saying like US war crimes are okay, but yeah.
People try and go for this narrative that it's like a perceptual argument, that it's like, oh, it's not that the US actually wants to commit war crimes. It's just that they get scared that they might accidentally commit a war crime, or like they don't know what the definition is. So even though they wouldn't do war crimes if they could act, they get scared anyway and don't do something that's perfectly legal. But I think that argument is kind of silly. Like it's like the same kind of rhetoric used to justify like stuff in Iraq that was probably bad.
You certainly can read it though. You
Yeah,
certainly
very very readable.
yeah.
We've read it.
Yeah. We're saying arguments are silly, but like all arguments are arguments that can be
Yes,
right.
all of the arguments that we're saying are silly. You can like it's about like truth, but you can definitely win them in the context of a round, and you can definitely convince lay judges of a lot of these arguments.
Yeah.
Okay, next is politicization, which is
Wait,
that
wait. So let's Ifsa Falak wants us to elaborate on the internal link on the military chilling argument. Basically, the internal link says that wait, go back one.
yeah, I'm trying.
Oh. Basically, the internal link says that military generals will be really scared of prosecution from the ICC after we accede, right? Because after we accede, the ICC is allowed to prosecute American nationals. That means because they're scared, they just will like do nothing, right? So it's like a paralysis kind of argument. They're scared that something will happen, that they'll be prosecuted by the ICC, so they won't like go save people in the Middle East or something.
Yeah, there was a version of this argument being run having to do with Syria and stopping ISIS. Um, but the problem with that is that we said we were withdrawing from Syria like 2 days ago. So the uniqueness on that version of the argument is kind of cooked, but you can find stuff that says like, oh, we'd stop, we'd just let people walk all over us in places like North Korea, that kind of thing. Yeah. Next is politicization of the ICC, which is an interesting argument because you concede that the ICC is good and the ICC is working. But the link is that the US joining means that we gain influence and we use the ICC as a puppet, right? Just because we join the Rome Statute doesn't mean that like the US automatically like respects its ideals and everything it stands for. So we would probably try and use it in order to further US goals, get better US hegemony and use it to prosecute our enemies and protect the US even more. And that's bad because it creates an ineffective ICC, and that's good because it's a prereq to all the AF impacts. So if yes, the ICC is good, we agree, but it gets bad in the neg world, and it creates interesting clash with AF arguments. Oh, this is an argument that Masterman cut that people low-key hate on it. It's kind of not good, but I think it's interesting on the tech. It's that right now Trump is going to try and pass anti-climate legislation, but it fails because Democrats are united in the Senate, which means that they can't pass the filibuster. And the filibuster can be used to block Trump's oil deregulation and electric car bans. But when you vote affirmative, the way that fiat happens is through the most likely implementation of the resolution. And we would say that the most likely implementation of the resolution would happen because Democrats are the ones who are mostly in favor of the ICC. So they would have to waste political capital, and it results in them not getting the chance to block that anti-climate legislation. And then the impact is climate change leads to extinction, and it's kind of important to have this scalar factor to it. It's because Trump is probably going to cook the climate no matter what we pull out of the Paris Climate Accords. It's just like the less the climate gets bad, the better.
And some people are kind of like iffy on the link here. They don't really understand it. Basically, it's the Democrats who would want to join the ICC. And so through fiat, basically the Democrats say, you scratch my back, right? Joining the ICC, and I'll scratch yours. I'll like not do the filibuster on the climate action, on the anti-climate bills.
It does not go against the counterplan rule because the uniqueness on the argument says that like the neg defends the status quo. So if you can prove that in the status quo, the Trump's climate bills are going to get blocked, then that's not a counterplan. It's just what the status quo is, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? But no, it is not a counterplan because the uniqueness on this argument does not say, oh, instead we should do this. It's that we're going to do this right now, but we can't do it in the affirmative law. So it's not really a counterplan. Okay. Israel, this is a pretty good tech argument. And I don't know, some people had some success with it on the way. The uniqueness is that we're allies with Israel now and we send them support. And that's why Israel is like peaceful. Like Israel stopped, the reason why Israel signed a peace deal, a ceasefire in the short term is because they have US support and they feel secure. And that's the same reason why they're not like attacking Iran, even though Iran is trying to build nukes. But the link is that there's a warrant out for Netanyahu from the ICC, and when the U.S. joins, then Netanyahu gets scared that the U.S. is abandoning them because, like, oh, you signed this thing that says I'm a war criminal. What the hell? And he crashes out and he perceives abandonment. You don't need to prove that the U.S. actually is going to stop aid to Israel. All you need to prove is that Netanyahu thinks that. And there's evidence saying that when he perceives abandonment, he strikes out at Iran because he sees them as an existential threat. And that leads to escalation and extinction through great power draw in nuclear weapons from Israel, that kind of thing.
This is a similar link as the Russia disadvantage. It's like Putin gets mad, Netanyahu gets scared.
Yeah. I hate this argument. Is this presentation can be sent on Discord? It's being recorded, and Steven will put it in a Google Drive and send it to people. So I think it'll be on the Discord. Yeah.
This argument is pretty similar to like the military chilling argument. Is there a disk?
Oh, like a Discord? Yeah, Steven, can we get a link to the Discord?
We'll put that in the chat later.
We'll put it in the chat before it ends.
This is pretty similar to the military chilling argument, just more specific. Basically, right now, I'm sure you've heard like drone strikes are good to counter ISIS and stuff. We send drones to like send missiles to ISIS. But the Rome Statute says no more drone strikes, and so the U.S. can't do drone strikes anymore, which means we can't counter terrorist groups, which is bad because terrorist groups will get weapons of mass destruction and nuke everyone.
I hate this argument. I think it's immoral because the reason why the ICC says not to do drone strikes is because drone strikes kill civilians.
Yeah.
So if you want, I've seen some people read this as an AF. So if you're feeling good, like a good person, do that.
Or if somebody reads drone strikes on you, you can read turns that drone strikes bad.
Yeah. That's definitely a good strat against drone strikes. All right. Those are all of the arguments that we've prepped out to talk about. But if you have any questions, would the main way to respond to drone strikes just say it doesn't look to the ICC to just say that looks to the Rome Statute, it doesn't specify drones there? I mean, yeah, I would say the main way to respond would go we probably shouldn't drone strike if it's going to kill civilians. There's like an issue with the link evidence that people read on this contention, or we're reading on this contention at Pennsbury, which is that right after the sentence it says that there's not an exception. There's an exception to the ban on drone strikes in the ICC that says like if they're actively engaging in combat or like violent activity, then they are they can be targeted. Which I would say that's the best way to respond to it. Is that
there's this it's the Alberstadt evidence, and it says pretty explicitly no drone strikes if it's civilians, yes drone strikes if they're combatants. So yeah.
And then they have to collapse their link down to we should attack people before we're certain they're terrorists. And
Yeah.
that is not a good way to learn crime.
Problematic. Yeah.
Yeah. What would be good counter arguments for spillover and ICC inefficiency? Spillover, you could say that most of the US's allies have already joined the ICC. Like, there's not many people that the US is kind of the black sheep in when it comes to like the Western world. Like, if we join the ICC, not many countries would follow suit that haven't already joined. Also, just like ICC, you just prove that the ICC is ineffective, not because there's not enough people in it, but because there's like structural issues with the way that it works. It doesn't have a police force. It can have certain cases vetoed by the Power Five. All those things. Those would be the good arguments to spillover. Like if you prove that the ICC is inefficient, then spillover kind of is non-unique. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Um,
I think the best argument to ICC inefficiency, so you're the affirmative, you're responding to the negative saying that the ICC is inefficient. I think the best way to respond to that argument is just saying sure, but the affirmative makes it better for laundry list of reasons, increased jurisdiction, increased funding, etc. I think that's the best way to respond to that argument. Or you could just make arguments why the ICC is efficient right now. Like 6 months ago, they prosecuted somebody who had committed war crimes.
yeah. Any more questions? We would give some like stuff about Prague here, like K's and picks and stuff, but we went to Pennsbury and there were really not many interesting things going on there. For Israel, the US. Yeah, I did see the argument articulated as Israel gets mad and they break out of the ceasefire. So if you want to run it on like the lay, then I would say that that's a good way to run that argument because I don't think they buy the like Iran nuclear scenario, but they do buy the Israel lash out scenario.
Additionally, there is also an ICC arrest warrant out for like a Hamas war criminal. So Hamas could also pull out of the ceasefire. So it could be like bilateral ceasefire cooked. Everybody fights each other.
Oh, that's good. That's also kind of a response to Israel, is that it's like Israel's not that mad about this ICC as people say because they're not the only ones being prosecuted. Like both sides of the Israel-Hamas war are being prosecuted. There's some cards that say that.
Could you argue that Netanyahu's unpopular in his own country and there would be likely go yeah, so that would be like a non-unique, right? Like if even if we pull out, Netanyahu isn't even going to be running the Israeli government soon. So he can't lash out because he's not going to have any power.
Yeah, the only problem with that
Is
is the time frame is that because people articulate that link as perceptual, that as soon as you affirm, then Netanyahu lashes out, then he can lash out before the election.
Right, do you want to think of critique links on this topic?
Yeah. The SecK security
Yeah.
that has a good link just because it's saying like Russia's a threat, China's a threat. You know, people and all these people are threats that we need to be fighting against. What else is there?
Right,
You can make
that you could read on this topic. Certainly you can read structural violence on the affirmative, or you can read like just other genocide framing on the AF saying we should prioritize solving for genocide or we should prioritize solving for structural violence. And that probably moots a lot of neg offense, right? Like it moots the military chilling arguments, it moots the Israel arguments. Well, kind of. It doesn't moot the Gaza Israel argument, but it does moot the Israel Iran argument. And you certainly can read that and just say like AF means we can prosecute the Uyghur genocide, like genocides in Myanmar, genocides in Sudan, etc.
When talking about political capital and Senate floor time for neg, is it topical?
Yes.
Yeah, it's topical. The link, that's all topical. It's basically saying, I'll just go over that argument again because I think it's a little bit confusing, and I think it's an interesting enough argument that it's like fun to talk about. Oh, you guys weren't supposed to see the behind the scenes. Hello? Is this slideshow working? Am I tweaking? Okay, yeah. So basically, in the status quo, the Democrats are going to block Trump's climate bills, but we have to spend political capital on passing the SEC, and so we can't do that instead. And so it's all topical because it's about the affirmative stop wastes our political capital in the fiat world, right? So there's no like pre-fiat offense there. There's definitely some questions about the way that fiat works. Like if we vote AF, does that mean that we have to like articulate which political party uh, causes the AF to happen and the specific political processes by which it happens? Um, and so that's kind of weird. But yeah, if the most likely implementation is assumed under fiat, wouldn't the most likely implementation that Trump isn't in office at all?
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I would say that insofar as Trump is in office right now, that would be the most likely implementation. Like, it means like the most likely implementation when you press the F ballot. Like, I don't think that they can make the argument that, oh, the most likely implementation is 4 years from now when Stephen A. Smith is president. You know?
Fiat guarantees that it's happening right now. What's
Yeah.
the peacekeeper's contention that people are running about, and how would you respond to it? Is it an or neg?
Is it a neg argument or an AF argument?
Oh, I've heard that it's a neg. It's just military chilling.
Oh.
It's the same. Yeah, it's the same link. It says that right now the U.S. peace are like doing peacekeeping missions throughout the world, but the affirmative makes them like too scared to do anything because they think they might get prosecuted for war crimes. And the impact is like bad peacekeeping. Couple responses. One, it's like probably incoherent because the ICC is already the court of the last resort. So if the US prosecutes those crimes anyway, they'll never get sent to the ICC. Two, I just don't think it's a true argument. Like, why would Ray? Do you have better responses?
I mean, like the response that I always give to military chilling is just a little analytic. That's like it doesn't make any sense for me to be deterred from anything that isn't a war crime because when police arrest people for stealing from a store, I don't stop going to the store. I just stop stealing.
Yeah.
That's the analytic I give it every round. So I think that that's like a pretty simple way of articulating it. It's like, why would I be deterred from doing something that's not a war crime? It makes no sense. Could you frame it as colonialism or imperialism and read a bunch of terms? Frame the AF as colonialism or imperialism?
I think you could.
You could, but like it's probably less colonial and less imperial than the US.
Yeah.
Like the US giving up sovereignty to like a global weak power is probably less colonial than just us doing whatever the fuck we want. I shouldn't curse. My fault. Since the ICC is a controversial topic, can we argue that weeks of debating is going to be used to ratify the treaty, removing time for other domestic bills? I would say that that's probably a violation of fiat. It's
Yeah.
like delay. It's like delaying the affirmative and letting the neg set when the affirmative happens is probably like bad for fairness.
Yeah.
In the round. So I would say you could probably get some theory right on you for that if that's your kind of circuit. I think that a contention on the app that says war criminals who are in sanctioned cities right now will be caught once. Oh, you mean sanctuary cities? No, sanctioned city. Okay, will be caught once you affirm would be a good idea. I mean, the only problem is that like
Wait, can you ex post facto in the ICC?
oh no, I don't think the ICC. I don't think that if you committed a war crime and then your country joins the ICC, I don't think you can get prosecuted for it after the fact. But also, like, I don't know what war criminals are in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess people from like Afghanistan, but I don't think that they get prosecuted. People have been trying to come up. I've seen people trying to cook up contentions that say like Trump will be held accountable, but that's kind of not how the ICC works. Like, if the country doesn't want to get caught, then the country doesn't get caught. But let's say if the U.S. did join the ICC under the Trump administration, wouldn't Trump most likely just not enforce it? I mean, yeah, there's definitely arguments to be made that we would never actually follow the treaty. But once again, there's like issues of what fiat means there. Like if we accede to a treaty, do we just follow it? Right?
I mean, you can argue definitionally the ICC I mean the word accede means to agree to the whole of, so probably they'll agree to it. Also, fiat in order to join a treaty, the president needs to say yes to it. That's how the our system works. And 2/3 of the Senate needs to say yes. So that means that they'll probably like the ICC.
Yeah. Also, like the US takes our international agreements like pretty seriously for the most part. Like Trump doesn't like NATO, but he's still helping NATO.
Abides by it. Yeah.
Like he's still like because it's an internet like he probably doesn't love the UN, to be honest. He's pretty isolationist, but he still deals with the UN. What is fiat on the political capital? Okay, so fiat is basically the imaginary world that happens after the judge votes affirmative. So when you're comparing, when you're talking about these imaginary worlds, fiat is the idea of the affirmative passing. And that's true for all arguments. Like Israel is happening after fiat. I don't really know what the word means. It's from policy debate, but basically that's what we're saying is that
Fiat means like it has been done. It's a Latin word, I think. Greek, maybe.
yeah.
One of them.
So it's basically like fiat is the process by which the affirmative happens, and then the world afterwards is the fiat world, the post-fiat level. So a little bit of kind of getting past topic, but like theory, if you guys know what like theory or critiques are, they generate pre-fiat offense, which is saying like that there's a reason to vote for them that happens not in the imaginary world, but in the real world. Can you argue that if the US were to join the ICC, they could just veto anything against them or their allies, Israel? Yeah,
No, wait.
that's the politicization. I don't know about the word veto, but
Yeah.
that's what politicization thing is that the ICC is I don't know where it is. It's like earlier in the presentation. And basically says that the US would politicize the ICC and make it so that like Israel doesn't get prosecuted, US war crimes don't get like prosecuted, anything like that.
And that could contribute to like the colonialism framing that guy was talking about earlier. Like if the US co-ops the ICC for their goals, that could potentially be colonialist.
Mhm. Especially when you think about that bias thing that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Because most of the members are from Africa. And so the US commandeers the ICC as a new international tool to control Africa. That's probably like neocolonialism and bad.
How do you reply to cyber contentions on the neg? So when the neg says that right now we need cyber defense to stop Chinese like cyber attacks, AF means we can't do cyber attacks. I think all of the link evidence on that dissent is fake. Like it says we need cyber defense to counter China, and then it says that cyber attacks are illegal under the Rome Statute. That doesn't mean we can't defend, right? That just means we can't like take out Chinese like water and internet. We can still
Yeah.
defend against the Chinese attacks.
Yeah. The ICC would get rid of unprompted, aggressive cyber actions, not defensive cyber actions. If AF came true, what would that mean for the bilateral immunity agreements? Would they just go away? That's definitely something that you can adjudicate in rounds. That's kind of hard for me to say because I don't know. I think if we sign the ICC, we would probably get rid of the bilateral immunity agreements because it's kind of nonsensical. But you could always make the argument that that amplifies the double standard thing. Like, oh, we're going to join the ICC, but you guys can't actually prosecute us. That could be read as a turn to credibility. US cred. All right, let's get like one or two more questions, and then I think we'll wrap up. If looks like no questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, what does it say?
Ray, how'd you get so good at debate?
Well, I learned it from, being around great debaters all the time, like you.
Mm.
Sam,
Yeah.
how do you get so good at giving topic lectures?
Well, I learned it from only the best. We have one last question. Two more questions. Okay. July of last year, a law was passed that the ICC cannot be funded anymore. In the AF, would that be ratified? Oh, unratified.
Unratified. I don't know.
Who passed that bill?
Yeah, I don't know anything about that law.
Yeah. because the US never funded the ICC in the first place. But I would venture to guess that it would be unratified because the US after fiat would have to give money to the ICC. How do you how do you respond to pandemics? Oh, okay, yeah. The pandemics argument is again this military chilling argument, right? It says that right now the US military does a lot to combat pandemics, but when you affirm they get too scared to do anything, and so they stop combating the pandemics. One, the uniqueness is like really bad on the question. Like the US military doesn't really do anything to stop pandemics. Just read your opponent's uniqueness evidence, it's not going to say anything. Two, you can just make general responses like Ray said to the military chilling arguments. So you want to do the analytic again?
Yeah. If the police arrest people from stealing at the store, I don't stop going to the store, I just stop stealing.
Yeah.
That's
So,
a hard one. Put that in your block files, guys.
yeah,
Write that
that's
one.
so tough. That's so tough. Yeah.
Play judges love it.
Also, you should probably be reading Impact Defense against pandemics because I don't think that they'll cause extinction, and I don't. Yeah, there's just no shot that that happens.
All right, last question. If we have any more questions in the future, is it okay to contact you? Absolutely, it is. I'm
Yeah.
gonna put my email in the chat.
I'll put mine as well.
You can copy those. I'm also on the Discord for Empower Debate.
Is the US not already vilifying? Yeah, I think that's a really good argument to. That's a really good answer to the nag Russia argument because the link says that Putin gets mad when the US doesn't like it, when the US like doesn't like Russia, but obviously the US is already taking a stance against Russia by like giving money to Ukraine and giving weapons to them. So I think yeah, the link is kind of incoherent because of that, but that's an argument you can make in round.
All right. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Yep.
This will be posted online afterwards. Oh, more questions come in. What's the
Right.
Discord? Oh. Yes, I will send a link to the Discord.
Thanks, Ryan. Guys, what tournaments are we debating at this topic? I know I'm going to Penn and Harvard. Yeah, I'll see you guys at Harvard, Stanford.
Oh,
then.
shoot. My Discord is broken and I would need to restart my laptop. Steven! Is Steven still here?
I doubt it. Oh, he's still in the meeting, but he's in his SAT class.
That's true. Is there anyone in this topic lecture that's also in the Discord? Can you send a link to an invite? Thank you. Harvard, Stanford. Sweet.
Everyone should be on Masterman's wiki. We're gonna cook up some tough things.
Yeah, the Masterman prep is amazing.
Masterman WE is gonna read some cool things on this topic.
If you see //RKE, you just know the card's good.
Yeah, that's Ray.
That's me. Sam, what's your tag?
//SW in lowercase letters.
Oh, that is kind of cool.
It's cool.
Mine's all caps.
Yeah.
All right. There is a link to the Discord that you guys should join. All right. Bye, guys.
Wait, Ray, if you leave, then the meeting will end, so nobody will be able to join this.
Okay. Get that link while you can.
Yeah. All right. Good luck on this topic, everyone.
Yeah. Good luck. Thanks for coming.
Yep.